Scientists say our climate is changing, a phenomenon that over the course of many years could have a large impact on our coastal community here on Cape Cod. In Barnstable, we have many miles of coastline, leaving us vulnerable to impacts if climate change brings sea level rise and an increase in the frequency and intensity of coastal storms.
Well, certainly climate change planning is a national issue at this point, where we're certainly seeing a lot of attention to it all over the country from many different stakeholders. Here in the town of Barnstable, it's important because it has the potential to have impacts on us long term, relevant to our infrastructure, relevant to the quality of life that we offer here. There's economic impacts as well as societal type impacts. Specifically, if we see a change in temperatures, or we see rises over time in water levels, that in itself has impacts on what we do here. The environment is such an important part of life on Cape Cod, and why we're here, and why our visitors come here, and why business is successful here, that we need to keep a close eye on this, understand it, not react to it, but try to plan for it so that as things change, because many of these issues are completely out of our control, but as things change, be able to adapt. That's why it's called an adaptive management plan.
One of the topics that we've had on our plate here at Growth Management on the comprehensive planning side and on the economic development side, community development, and even the regulatory side has been climate change and the effects of climate change on the community, and what we might need to do to assist the community to come to grips with these changes that are coming, and to also help them find a way to adapt to these changes. We decided early on, a couple of years ago, that we weren't ready to recommend actions just yet. We wanted to engage the community in a conversation about climate change. And so we partnered through the coordination with our local National Estuarine Research Reserve at Waquoit Bay. We partnered with MIT and the University of New Hampshire and the Consensus Building Institute on the NECAP project. 4 states in New England were chosen for this, 4 sites in Barnstable.
Local stakeholders and residents joined together for a series of exercises presented by the Climate Adaptation Project.
Whether any of you have questions about topics that came up in the game, and whether there's anything, and we've already kind of touched on this, that you want to know more about in regards to the climate change risks facing Barnstable. So like, what does Barnstable need, from your perspective, going through this exercise to sort of understand the issues and maybe be able to make some movement on them?
Broader, I mean, I'm equally concerned with the acidification of the ocean. I mean, to me, just sea level rise and flooding is terrible, but to me, there are actually ecosystem damage and subtleties that we're totally missing, and I think that was mentioned over there. But the crisis, and just thinking about the sea level rising, isn't enough to motivate a lot of behavior.
We need continued up-to-date scientific assistance.
I think it was a great opportunity for us to partner in the earlier stakeholder assessment and analysis that was done. I don't think people should be scared of this issue. I think this is an issue that we should look at in the long term and begin to understand. I'm sure there'll be lots of debate about whether this is even occurring or not, but the fact is we're a waterfront community that any change in the water level is going to have an impact on us. Therefore, if we even think that this may be something that could occur in the future, we need to be able to plan for it long term. We need to be able to run simulations, and we need to be able to have a plan in place to address whatever issues might occur.
Climate change is happening, as the science makes clear, and there are certainly going to be some areas of the planet, some areas of our country that are more impacted than others. Cape Cod, the town of Barnstable, is a coastal community, and it's likely to be impacted certainly more than inland areas are. There are a variety of different kinds of impacts that the town is concerned about. Storm surges, more intense and extreme weather events, more coastal flooding. These are all issues that are going to have a direct impact on Cape Cod and on in our little town of Barnstable.
The results of the New England Climate Adaptation Project showed that sea level rise, flooding, drought, and heat waves could have an impact on our community, and in fact are the top risks we face as the climate changes.
We've definitely, at Sandy Neck, we've definitely had a couple of really tough winters where we had continual storms coming out of the northeast, and that trend is probably climate change driven. You know, it's kind of hard to say each year what we're looking at, but this particular last 2 years we had Nemo, and then last year, of course, it just kept blowing out of the northeast. And as a result, we lost quite a bit of our dune, particularly in front of the parking lot here, like from the parking lot down towards Sandwich, and certainly other sections of the beach, but that's where we felt it the hardest. And so we lost a lot of dune, and then we lost beach elevation. And when you lose beach elevation, what you end up getting is that the next storm can come in even harder and faster because there's less beach in the way of that storm energy. So it's like kind of a double whammy.
One of the things that we've been able to accomplish through the Cape Cod Commission Act and the District of Critical Planning Concern tool. We were approached several years ago by the village of Centerville, and they wanted 2 areas in Centerville protected in a way that state zoning law doesn't allow it to be protected or doesn't enable it to be protected. And that was their village and also their coastal area down at Craigville Beach. One of the regulations that we put in place was that there can't be any new development, any new construction in the so-called V-zone. What's a V-zone? The V-zone is the FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency's flood mapping designation for zones that are most likely, areas or zones that are most likely to be the subject of storm surge and effects of coastal storms. So Craigville Beach is one of 3 major barrier beaches in the town of Barnstable, and it is the only one that is fully developed. So this, putting this in place, this provision that there can be no new construction in the flood zone, has become increasingly important. And because this is a sort of separate zoning than so-called Chapter 40A zoning in Massachusetts, it's not subject to grandfathering provisions. So this regulation took effect immediately. When we put the regulation in effect, we were operating under the older FEMA maps that designated a rather small incursion of the V-zone onto the beach, but with the new delineations of the flood maps, which take into effect some of the new modeling that's out there around sea level rise, it goes further up the beach and really will have an effect on properties going forward. So this reduces risk. It reduces risk in terms of financial risk. It reduces risk in terms of floating debris in a case of a storm. And it's a good management technique, and it's not we were lucky to be able to accomplish that through this special process.
Barnstable leaders are working on mitigation measures in an effort to reduce the impact of climate change. Solar panels are being installed in several locations around town, wind turbines are in place, energy-efficient vehicles are in use, and plans are being crafted to reduce energy usage in several town facilities.
Our green initiative has been broad in Barnstable. We look at our technology, both in the methods of how we do things and, you know, in the physical assets that we put in place, like our solar panels, our wind turbines, and on a smaller scale, the vehicle choices that we make, and on an operational scale, how we utilize our facilities and our vehicles. Because all of that can have an impact on the carbon footprint, certainly. It's a priority for us within the community to take that into consideration and to adopt, you know, changes and improvements as we see appropriate. But I think it's even broader than that in our long-term planning. Barnstable is one of the larger communities in Massachusetts. We have a very large and diverse infrastructure here. Not many communities have a large roadway system and 2 shorelines and all of the features that we offer relative to, you know, our community. And so we need to be able to understand how changes in our environment long term will impact those because of the financial implications as well as the usability and certainly safety side of planning for our community and our community's infrastructure.
Barnstable continues to take a proactive approach to the risks associated with climate change and will continue studying the issue and its impacts on our environment.
What we like to get these days is not so much a plan, but we call it an implementation strategy. Plans have that connotation, although there's a value to them, of sort of being a planning document that just doesn't really have a life of its own. We're very much interested in helping the community take action, and so an implementation strategy is what we'll be looking at. In speaking with the folks we did the NECAP project with, the scientists at University of New Hampshire in particular, they indicated to us that we're ready for that. There's actually action items called out in here that would lead us to a scope of work. So we'd be looking at things, for example, in the case of an extreme storm event, how many homes are involved? Are there people living in those homes year-round? Would we have to accommodate them through either shelters or perhaps relocation? So those are the kinds of things we'd look at. We'd look at, in terms of temperature rise, do we need more cooling centers in the town of Barnstable? We have, as the most of the Cape does, an aging population. Will we have to make provisions in our capital planning for more cooling centers for folks? So there'll be just things of that nature. It's really a new type of planning that we're learning about as we go along. There's a lot of professional discussion about it. I'm going to a conference in a few weeks, and there's a whole track on adaptation and resiliency planning. So planners together across the country are really working on this, along with scientists and their local communities.
Now, while we know we are concerned about the impacts of sea level rise for a variety of different reasons that we've talked about, there are things that we can do. Certainly in the town of Barnstable, really since more than a decade ago, the Barnstable Town Council has taken a position on this issue, and the town has worked diligently to try to reduce our use of fossil fuels. We have every year had energy efficiency audits done in our buildings. We've changed out our lighting, and we've enhanced the efficiency of all of our mechanical and other systems to reduce the amount of fossil fuels we use. As well, we're mitigating as much as one little town can the impacts of the use of fossil fuel by producing more renewable energy ourselves. Over the last several years at our water pollution control facility, we developed a 1 megawatt solar wind project. Behind me you see the results of that project, some 800 kilowatts of solar PV, and behind us 2 100 kilowatt wind turbines are producing green, renewable energy that's not producing more greenhouse gas emissions.
I think understanding the science and the theoretical impacts of the changes that are being identified, and then understand how that will impact what we have and how we live on Cape Cod. I mean, I had a discussion with our GIS department about being able to simulate changes in water level, and we can certainly do that, but the whole focus and the requests were on assets, and mainly you think of buildings. And I said, well, geez, if the water level rose a foot, what would happen to our beaches? And would we still have our beaches? And if we were losing portions of our beaches, what impact might that have? So sometimes the more subtle changes could have really big impacts on us. So we need to understand that. It doesn't mean we panic to it. It means we think about it, and if we see it heading in that direction, then we are certainly ready to manage it.